Before this story continues, I would like you to consider this number. 85,000, that's the number of people who flooded the Roland Garros ticketing system just minutes after the 2026 French Open went live. Not in a single day. Not in the morning and a matter of minutes. The servers gave in. The website went down. The waiting list, a mechanism intended to manage the orderly queue of a few thousand names, grew so quickly that the engineers keeping an eye on it couldn't quite have faith in what they were observing. Here's what really sets this number apart. This was not a widespread worldwide surge motivated by a general love of tennis. There was a concentration of connection requests. IP addresses from Filipino communities in the US and Canada, as well as from the Philippines, are flowing in. From the United Kingdom, Australia, and every region of Europe where Filipino diaspora members had established themselves and seemed to be attempting to reach Paris at this point. This was a long-standing practice of the French Open organizers. They had controlled the demand for Serena Williams over the years, for Nadal at home, and for Federer during his heyday, when she was the most powerful player in the history of women's tennis. They believed they comprehended what the extraordinary demand appeared to be. They didn't. Since none of the gamers had ever experienced a ticketing crash system throughout the initial minutes. For a first round, none of them had produced secondary market pricing match that was more expensive than the men's final tickets. None of them had prompted an urgent meeting with the administrative offices of Roland Garros, where officials from the event gathered around a table with spreadsheets and nervous looks, attempting to determine how to handle a situation for which they had never created a backup plan. The participant in charge of all of this was 20 years old. She had never taken home a WTA championship. She was ranked 38th in the world. Alex was her name. I'll slow this down a bit, because the headline figures don't fully capture the richness, strangeness, and emotion of this situation. And I don't want to skip any of it. I want to begin with the Chanel narrative because it is the particulars that most effectively conveys the scope of Alex's development in the months preceding this competition. Elaine Wertheimer is 85 years old. He is the millionaire who acquired Chanel and turned it into a $15 billion conglomerate. He has clothed music stars, movie legends, monarchs, and other individuals whose faces symbolize entire eras of global culture. Furthermore, he had never personally made a sponsorship offer to an athlete in his whole empire. Never once. The business contacts were managed by his brother Gerard. The partnerships were overseen by his executives. Wertheimer himself functioned in a specific type of rarefied shade, both present and absent from the outcomes. From the media attention. The brand made a statement. He didn't have to. The 2026 player list for the French Open was then made public. And a man who had spent 60 years seeing trends come and go and had discovered to distinguish between an instant and a movement during all of that observation, he answered the telephone. He put up a 5-year, $45 million deal, AN Iconic Selection, a worldwide campaign. Chanel's new athletic division's face. Additionally, there was a need that Alex provide her with. Before she set foot on the Roland Garros clay, she responded. Not after a successful outcome. Not following a lengthy run in the draw. Earlier. When the tale finally came to light, the tennis community had a lot of questions regarding that condition. Out. How can you defend giving a player who hasn't won a grand prize $45 million? How can a luxury brand be developed? Revolve around a person who is rated 38th in the world? What qualities does the House of Chanel look for in a 20-year-old from Manila that it has never witnessed in any distinguished champion it has ever come close to over the previous few decades? All of those questions have the same response, which serves as the foundation for the entire narrative. Wertheimer did not travel to Paris in order to purchase a rating. After spending 60 years developing a brand, he traveled to Paris. Centered on the notion of aspiration, centered on the notion that, at its most potent, luxury has nothing to do with possessions. It has to do with how something makes you feel. Whether you recognize yourself in it is what matters. Whether it relates to anything genuine in you. And what Alex does each and every time she enters a court while the Philippine flags are fluttering in the stands. And the screams that fill the stadium give millions of fans a sense of visibility in a place that wasn't constructed with them in mind, in its most basic form, that is aspiration. and to an 85-year-old guy who has. Throughout his career, he understood that desire was more valuable than any Grand Slam trophy on a resume. The emergency meetings at the administrative offices, the ticketing crash, and the Chanel meeting of Roland Garros are all the result of a far earlier, more subdued beginning. They are the results of a narrative that starts in Manila rather than Paris, with a 12-year-old girl producing. A choice that most adults would be reluctant to make. She left her neighborhood, her family, her language, and her house. Traveled to Mallorca, Spain, to join the Rafa Nadal team after growing up in the regular routines of life in the Philippines. Academy, it's uncomfortable in the academy, it was never intended to be. The underlying philosophy of. It was constructed by a man who went on to become the best clay court player in history, not because he was the most gifted of his generation, but because he was prepared to endure more suffering than anyone else. The drills don't stop. There is no compromising on the standards. When a player follows every logical instinct in their body, they are rewarded by the society. Is advising them to take a nap. When a 12-year-old from Manila arrives in a Spanish academy without her family around, by all accounts, the change was significant. Nevertheless, she took everything in. Each lesson, each philosophy.
They relied on their superior basketball acumen to locate the open window. They choose the most intelligent basketball play as opposed to the recommended coaching action. The visual proof of this improvisation is displayed in the celebration after the shot as Caitlin Clark leaves the court, pays special attention to her body language. With a self-assured, "you cannot see me" gesture, she strikes her opponent. She and her teammates share an aggressive, excited dap. However, take note of those she totally overlooks. She doesn't even look at Stephanie White as she passes by. She won't meet the eyes of her head coach. Rather, she makes direct eye contact with Sophie Cunningham. Observe their mutual smile. T resembles the sneer of two colleagues who simply wandered off course, ran their own play and performed it flawlessly. They are aware that they gained ultimate possession. They are aware that they saved a coaching staff that was about to implode. Leaving the huddle, said, "That's what we need to do." "Steph, how confident are you in Caitlin for that shot? Or was it the play you drew up?" "Well, the play was written by Austin. Austin handles a lot of our post-game tasks. After all, he should merely coach at this time." "Stephanie, would you please take another leave of absence? Austin Kelly should just be a coach at this time. Compared to you, he appears more like the role. I don't see him twitching, slugging, or crossing his arms. In fact, he exudes leadership qualities. You behave in a certain way." The consequences of this autonomous. Even during the press conference following the game, decisions are made. Observe Stephanie White seated at the podium. She quickly shifts the blame and the credit when questioned directly about the last scene and her play call. She states that assistant coach Austin Kelly is the one who actually draws up all the end-of-game circumstances. Even while seated next to an obviously uncomfortable Lexi Hull, the head coach makes an effort to assert that their planning and the offensive execution were exactly in sync. She attempts to portray this as a coaching triumph, but the radio interviews, the visual proof, and the absence of sideline celebrations strongly imply otherwise. It's obvious that the players improvised. Despite the strict offensive scheme, they managed to save the game. Not as a result of it. When the players on the floor are more adept at reading the game than the coaches, there will inevitably be a reckoning. The Fever's exceptional court vision, quick thinking, and raw talent allowed them to survive tonight. However, for a team aiming to win a championship, improvising is not a dependable long-term offensive strategy. Culture. For this front office going into their next game, it poses a crucial question. Who is actually in charge of this team? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. If the Fever gives Caitlin Clark full control and, before the playoffs start, should the coaching staff take back control of this locker room or let her make the decisions?